What if I told you that I could predict your future without looking at your goals, your vision board, your bank account, or your calendar? I would simply listen to you talk. I'd listen to how you describe yourself, how you describe your marriage, your business, your health, your past, your parents, money, politics, God. And within a few minutes, I could tell you the level of consciousness from which you're living. Because your words are never just words. They are the audible expression of your consciousness. And most people think they're describing reality. They're not. They're revealing the beliefs, the emotions, the assumptions, and the identity structures through which they're experiencing reality. So the question isn't whether your words have power. The question is, what are your words revealing about the reality that you're unconsciously creating? That's what we're about to unpack together in today's episode of A Changed Mind. All right, guys, your words are not just words. What you speak is the audible expression of your consciousness. In other words, the language that you use reveals the beliefs, the emotions, the assumptions, the frequency from which you're living. And reality is not reflecting what it is that you want. It is reflecting that consciousness. You know, what is consciousness? Well, it's the sum total of what you believe, what you think, what you feel. It is the habituated frequency that you hold in your nervous system. It is the representational electrical activity of your brain. You are vibing all of the time. And you don't create what you want, you create what you vibe. So the experiences of your life are a representation of the thoughts, the emotions, and the habits of beliefs that you hold. Life is a mirror. Your bank account is a mirror. Your relationship is a mirror. Your business, your career, they're all mirrors of your consciousness. You've probably heard, if you've been in personal growth for a while, the concept of I am statements. And the concept of I am came from a really powerful story in the Bible where Moses, who I can only imagine feels like he's lost his way. He was at one point part of the Egyptian royal court. He becomes banished by Pharaoh. He ends up in the desert tending sheep. Little does he know that that's preparation for the shepherding of 700,000 Jews out of slavery in Egypt. And he comes upon this moment where he meets a burning bush. And the burning bush gives him his assignment, gives him his spiritual vision, and says, you got to return to Pharaoh. You got to ask him to free the Hebrews. And Moses asked this question, which is, all right, that's a pretty tall order. Who am I speaking with? And the bush responds, Yahweh, which translates to the I am that I am. It's the I amedness. It is the essence of who we are. You could think about it as the core of your soul. And so I am statements are very powerful, not because of the story of Moses in the burning bush, but because it is a self-identification. So every I am statement is a declaration of self. And that is an instruction to your subconscious mind. Spiritually and psychologically, these can be the most powerful words that you speak. So when you say, for example, I am poor, or I am unwanted, or I am unlucky, then that actually becomes true because what you're claiming is an identity, and your identity is a core aspect of your consciousness that will eventually outpicture itself into your reality and reflect back to you. How you speak about yourself shapes your consciousness, and every repeated declaration becomes another vote for the reality that you're living into. And this is important to understand because it's not just what you speak, it's that you hear yourself speak these words in your own words, and therefore they become even more true for you. In other words, it's one thing for someone to come up to me and tell me that I'm an idiot. I have a choice to believe it or not. But if I say that I'm an idiot, which, by the way, is not that far-fetched compared to a lot of the dialogue of the inner critic that most of us live with on a daily basis. I can only speak from my own experience, but there have been plenty of times in my life where I have called myself an idiot. I am an idiot. Then that bypasses the conscious filter. You're not determining whether you believe it or not. Inherently, it penetrates into the subconscious mind because you're speaking it in your own voice. And so your words are very powerful. My inquiry for you is, how are you normally speaking about yourself, whether it's out loud or whether it's in your own head? And how we also speak about others is indicative of our consciousness, right? Because when we speak poorly about our spouse or our business or money or politics or the economy, it reinforces the consciousness that we're occupying. And that just makes sense. if you are creating your own reality, and therefore every experience in your reality is a reflection of some aspect of yourself, when we start to complain or blame externally, what we're really doing is complaining, blaming, or reinforcing an aspect of ourself. And that's why so often in therapy, for example, or coaching, we can look at someone's accusation of someone else, and we 100% of the time find that's also an accusation that they're making of themselves, right? And complaining itself is inherently addictive. Not only is it damaging, but neuroscience tells us there's an addictive nature to complaining. I want you to think about this. We all complain. I'm sure I've had many complaints today. Maybe I woke up and said, oh, I don't feel very good, or gosh, I'm so tired, or I have so much to do today, or why didn't so-and-so do the thing they said that they were going to do, or this thing I'm about to do is really hard. This is complaining. And complaining is dangerous because it becomes social. Oftentimes, we're not just complaining to ourselves. But we complain with someone else. And then we enroll them into this idea of the complaint. So it becomes even more so reinforced because not only have I said it, I've gotten someone else to buy into it. And then again, it becomes addictive because complaining repeatedly activates the brain's threat networks and it strengthens negative neural pathways through neuroplasticity. Chronic complaining, this is what science tells us, actually elevates the stress hormone cortisol. And over time, the brain becomes more and more addicted to it. And so it becomes more and more efficient at finding problems. And then again, when we socialize our problems through the power of speech and the power of language, we validate our complaints. We get a social reward, an actual dopamine reinforcement, making complaining a conditional habit rather than conscious communication. The brain literally gets better at finding what you repeatedly focus on, so you start finding more problems in your life. So this is a very important consideration. And the best way for us to begin monitoring our consciousness is through speech because it becomes very difficult to notice what you're thinking, right? We have 60,000 some odd thoughts on a daily basis. It happens in rapid fire succession. You don't really notice what you're thinking, just like you don't notice every breath you take or every heartbeat that you beat, but you can notice what you speak. The stories that you tell, not only about what's going on in your present moment, but also notice your past also become the consciousness that we live from. I mean, many of us are living in a Bill Murray Groundhog Day type of existence where we're still talking about the stuff that's already done. It's no longer here in the present moment, but we're bringing it into the present moment through a story that we tell. You know, I know this from my live events where people will stand up to be coached. I'll ask them what they want or what the problem is, and they'll tell me their life story. Right? Well, I've always struggled with this, or when I was growing up with this happened, or my ex did this and then this other thing happened. And every retelling keeps the old self alive unless you assign a new meaning. And so we spend a significant portion of our talk time either speaking negative I am statements about ourselves, right? And there's a passage in the Bible that said we blesseth or curseth ourselves through the power of the tongue, or we complain. We complain about our life, we complain about ourselves, we complain about others, and or we tell stories about the past in the present moment that are no longer relevant to the future that we're trying to create. These are all ways that speech keeps us stuck. And take note that by the time your thought or your belief or the feelings inside of you become speech, they have crystallized into your reality that much more. Done a couple of episodes deep diving on this because it's important to understand when you get that reality is a frequency and everything is energy, and you are creating your reality through the vibration or the frequency that you commonly inhabit, then you can understand that speech is a much more powerful broadcast. It is an amplification of what you've been thinking and feeling and believing. You know, Napoleon Hill's groundbreaking novel, Think and Grow Rich, came to the conclusion that thoughts are things and they create your reality. But by the time you're actually speaking, it is such an amplification of that vibration that it accelerates that reality. So the question is, are you speaking a reality that you want, or are you speaking into a reality, what scripture would call curses? The other thing is that speech is the first action. It is the first materialization. In other words, up until that point in time, all of the frequencies and vibrations of your beliefs and your thoughts and your emotions, they're invisible. They haven't yet fully materialized and become solid in the world, but speech is the bridge to solidification. And this is why many people struggle with changing their mindset by working with the invisible forces of their beliefs or their emotions. I think it's important to become skilled at doing that. And we teach all kinds of frameworks and tools on the show, and our live events, and our courses, and my book that take that approach. But why this episode is so important is because it's giving you yet another tool that may be even easier for you to manage, which is paying attention to your speech. Another aspect of speech that is important is the difference between an affirmation and a decision. So Florence Scovel Shinn, who's one of the most influential metaphysical teachers of the 1900s, in fact, my last episode did a breakdown of her 5 most profound distinctions. She talks a lot about the difference between wishing and deciding, right? Hoping and commanding. Because a decision speaks from completion, and an affirmation often speaks from lack. So I just want you, again, to notice the difference between I hope that someday I will make some money and I am wealthy and prosperous. Or if the right circumstances show up, I may be able to overcome my chronic health condition versus I know myself to be healthy and vibrant. Right? If you look, the first decision is in the very beginning of Genesis. It says, let there be light. That is a command. And what happens as a byproduct of that command? There was light. It was not, I hope there's light or I want there to be light. It was, there is light now. Let there be light, and there was. And Jesus speaks about this so many times throughout the gospel. He says, truly, I tell you, if anyone says to this mountain, go throw yourself into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes what he says will happen, it will be done for him. He says, therefore, I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. That's Mark 11:23. And what Jesus is encouraging us into is commanding reality. And he's saying it's not just small things that you can command, but big things too, like telling the mountain to be moved. So it's also important to understand that you're not only broadcasting, you're also receiving. And I mentioned this a moment ago, that the words that you speak are also words that you hear. They reinforce your consciousness. And because they are in your own voice, they're even more powerful than when you hear them from someone else. And that is why we are encouraged to guard our inputs as fiercely as our outputs. You know, if you truly want to excel in your life and elevate your consciousness and master your mindset and be the commander of reality, your reality, you have to guard the inputs. You got to reduce the news. You got to reduce the social media. You got to reduce the distraction. You got to select what you listen to, the podcast, the channels, the friends you surround yourself with, the quality of the entertainment that you engage in, even the physical inputs into your body, the caffeine, the foods, the avoidance of toxins. Your environment is programming you every single day. And so if you want to become a master of your output, meaning your speech, you have to support your nervous system in down regulating and slowing things down. And today, you know, we live in a DoorDash, Amazon Prime, instant delivery type of environment where we're swiping up and we're swiping left and we're riding through the day on caffeine. That is not conducive to mastering your mind or mastering the way you use language. So I want to leave you with a challenge, all right? For the next 7 days, don't try to change your life. Don't try to make more money. Don't try to fix your relationships. Don't try to become more confident. Just listen. Listen to every I am. Listen to every complaint. Listen to every excuse. Listen to every judgment. Listen to every story that you tell about your past. Do an inventory of your consciousness through the words that you speak, because your words are giving you a real-time window into your consciousness. And your consciousness is the blueprint from which your reality is continuously being reflected. So before you speak this week, pause for just a moment and ask yourself, is this sentence reinforcing the person that I've been, or is it expressing the person that I want to become? Because every single word is a vote. Every single sentence is a reinforcement. Every conversation is a rehearsal for your future. Eventually, what you rehearse becomes what you embody. So my encouragement and invitation is to just pay a little bit more attention. Speak carefully, speak intentionally, speak from possibility, speak from certainty. Not because the universe is listening, even though it is, but because you are. And when your thoughts, your emotions, your beliefs, your nervous system, and your words begin to move in the same direction, you create a powerful coherence. And from coherence comes the ability to create a life that once felt impossible. Your words are not just describing your world, they're revealing the consciousness from which your world is being created. So do your best to choose them wisely. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I love sharing it with you. Do me a favor. My team loves when you subscribe. We're building an amazing community of impact-driven, powerful creators. Subscribe to the channel if you have not. By the way, there's a ton of free resources in the show notes. You can jump on over to davidbear.com, subscribe to our newsletter, get access to my Mind Hack ebook, a 4-part video series that's going to help guide you on how to implement these tools and these techniques even more powerfully in your life. And if you know somebody who would benefit from hearing this episode, oh my gosh, pay it forward and share it with them, because this is not a do-it-yourself project, this growing and evolving our consciousness. Why would you want to do it alone? It's about doing it with others. I'm so grateful for you to be here. Truly, thank you. I love you so much, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.